Howdy, Aggs. Football is just around the corner. The AggieCentral podcast is back.
Going to throw here to Parker at the 20, at the 15, at the 10, 5. He is almost. He got a touchdown! He got.
Left center field. It could be. It is a home run.
Oh, doctor!
Now, I know what you're thinking right off the bat. Central, why are we talking about the SEC championship game? We haven't even really sniffed the West, much less the game. True, but I got two things to say to that to start off with. First, 2012, 2020, and to a degree 2021. 2012, we lost two regular season games to LSU and Florida, beat Alabama that year. 2020, lost one game only to Alabama. Came back in 2021, beat Alabama, not the best record, but clearly the path is going to go through Alabama, okay? Now, in 2021, we did have a number of losses. A couple of those were a combined total of 7 points, and then we lost the LSU game with a no call for the forward progress, so a bunch of BS there. Could have put us a lot closer, and having beat Bama, you could see it as a possibility. 2022 came back and gave them all they could handle in that game as well. Like I said, game runs through Bama at this point to get through the West. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the pathway and then the game. As mentioned, we need to look back at the teams that have been the most successful. So I'll just go right along with 2012, right? Does anybody want to challenge that? Do you think 2020 is a better team? Got one in the teens maybe? Johnny Football is on the 2012 team, and let's go through the rest of this because you need to understand who's there, what's happening in each position group so that we can try and mirror that, right? And know what that team was doing that year. So quick summary. You got Johnny Football, right? Throws for 3,700 yards, runs for 1,400 more. We don't have a 1,000-yard rusher that year, but Ben Molina goes for probably 800. Probably Trey Williams or Kristen Michaels about 400 to 300, one or the other. Adding some yardage back onto that, right? Even though Johnny's got 1,400 himself. Now he's throwing to Mike Evans, big dog in the NFL, right? Swope, huge player back then. And then we've got Wachiku still, Kendrick McNeil, Malcolm Kennedy. We got 5 quality receivers going on there. Can we match that this year? Can we match the quarterback? Can we have a stable just like we had that year? So we will look at that. On the line, you've got Luke Jokel, Patrick Lewis in the center, Jake Matthews on the other edge. These are big and nasties. Do we have big and nasties to put in their place? Maybe. We'll talk about it. Flip, other side. Demontre Moore coming off the edge. Spencer Neely in the middle, right? Not the guy that you think's going to have the biggest year, but kind of terrorizes that year and plays a big part in the Alabama win. In the middle, you got Porter, Jenkins, and Stewart. Now, would it surprise you to find out that our top 4 tacklers that year were 3 linebackers and a defensive end? We haven't had that since I really don't know when. I looked back at it at one point. We haven't really come close, I think, except for maybe 2021 or 2020. Maybe it was Buddy Johnson and then, somebody in the middle, I think. But it really hasn't even been that close. It's been cornerbacks, DBs, the nickel, and the game's changed. So that makes sense to a degree. And it's probably not going to quite get back to that point in the near future. But still, important to know, we don't want tackles being made 10 yards down the field, right? So that's part of looking at what we're going to have to do. Now, you've got Dustin Harris on the edge, DeShazer Everett on the other edge. Remember, DeShazer Everett making that, 3 minutes to go, INT basically in the end zone against Bama to help secure that game. So a lot going on there personnel-wise, right? Now, just think about what we went through that game, that year actually. And I want to get back to the Ole Miss game that year. We were about 6 minutes to go. We were on our 20, and I think Johnny just gets sacked on like the 2-yard line, right? It was kind of controversial. He might have been sacked for safety. Ball was probably outside of the end zone. I think it was the right call, but still, 3rd and 19 play coming up kind of situation. He heaves one over to Mike Evans. Mike Evans comes down with it, and we go back down and score, I believe, to take the lead on that one, or come real close to tie it. So that was a huge pivotal moment. Not to mention, there was a tipped ball interception by Jenkins that game. There was Stewart just shooting his shot right up the middle whenever they were on like 4th and inches or something. We already stuffed him on 3rd, and he made a critical play there. And then Johnny kind of does the rest. But without that game, we literally wouldn't have been in the conversation. Cotton Bowl would have been gone without that play, in my opinion. And then people would not be saying, especially Aggies, that, you know, towards the end of the season, just even though we were 10-2, we had the early loss to Florida first game, right? People were saying, wow, this actually might have been the best team in the country. Alabama wins it that year. We did beat them. Looking at what we could do at the end of the year, kicking the crap out of OU. And we got one hell of a team going on. LSU got our GOAT that year. But consider this, which is a huge thing to consider when we talk about this pathway from beginning to end this coming year, getting through the West and representing the West and then winning that championship game. 5 turnovers against LSU that game. We were still in that game, 24-19, I believe. They played against Johnny really well. Defensive line really did a good job kind of shutting him down. Now, he still threw for about 270 yards, though. But I think it was 3 INTs, maybe one more fumble by Johnny, and I think one by Molina as well. But 5 turnovers total to their 0. How do you don't plan to win that game, do you? What did we do the rest of the year? Arguably, the Ole Miss game was the more frustrating game, and Alabama the most trying game. But you know, just solidly different teams with so much talent with Alabama. Ole Miss being, again, you just have your ebbs and your flows, right? But LSU, you've got to look at that game. You've got to say, without those turnovers, we come away with it, right? I don't think that's unfair to say. So now that we've kind of taken back and looked at that season, looked at that team, what it's got, can we replace those folks? And we'll get into that. That's going to be a whole separate other conversation. But let's just talk about the main parts, and let's start off with the game itself. What will people say if we win the SEC championship game? A couple things, and I think I'm going to surprise you with at least one, because there is definitely something I haven't mentioned yet about what was happening in that 2012 year that's kind of be a little bit of a new thing for us this year, right? So, I think right off the bat what people are going to say is that Jimbo picked the right QB. I'm not saying who that is just yet. Max, Wiegman. I don't think it's going to be between anybody else other than those two. However, won't tell you which way I'm leaning just yet. But he will have picked the right one. Now, why he picks and how he picks, we'll get into that, right? But he will have picked the right QB. I think another thing you're going to see this year, if we were to win that game, is people will be saying this is the strongest wide receiving core that we have had since that 2012 team. And you can see a lot of the stuff mirroring, right? So it's hard to say we've got a Mike Evans right now, but that could be a Noah Thomas. Do we have a Malcolm Kennedy? Do we have a Kendrick McNeil? Do we have a Swope? I think you could easily say, look at that catch that Swope made down the sideline, and then he gets pounded. He comes back with another one there soon after, if not before. That looks like a Moose Muhammad type of catch, does it not? utility, just everywhere, anywhere you need them to be. Malcolm Kennedy making those catches, Kendrick McNeil also making those catches down the field against Bama. That was just a really, really solid core. I would argue we've got the same solid core now, and maybe even more talent. But let's not get into that too deep. People will be talking about that if we win that particular game, because it's going to take a effort, big effort for sure. I think the D line is going to be another conversational piece that you're going to see from a lot of folks, and I think it'll be second to only 2018 Clemson. I think that's what people will say if we were to win that game. I think the things are laid out there. We've got a number of guys there that could pick up. Shamar Turner, we've got Diggs, we've got a couple of Stewarts going on, right? McKinley Jackson, Isaiah Rakes, Walter Nolan, and heck, I might even be leaving out 2 or 3 more. But the point is that this defensive line could shape up to be very similar to that 2018 Clemson team. Came in and beat us at Kyle Field, that we gave them all they could handle, but big obstacle to overcome in that game. So I think people will definitely be talking about that sort of type of thing if we're able to win that. What else? Here's my low-key one. What are you thinking? What's in your mind? What will people be saying if we win that game? Go back to 2012 real quick. What was helping Johnny out a lot? Johnny looked over the sidelines quite a bit during that year. He did some stuff on his own too, don't get me wrong, but he always had Cliff Kingsbury right there at his side, and Cliff was calling plays. I think people are going to say that Petrino was the right hire. It'll be all over the place, and we could be done with him after 1 year if that's the case too. So that'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But Petrino will be a big talking point, I imagine, if we're able to pull that out, right? So, yeah, very, very thrilling to think towards that type of thing. I'd love to have that narrative going on. Sure would. 4th down, 3rd down would be a big talking point, but more so in the point of the attitude of the team. It'll be kind of about how this team really feeds into those inches. The inches in the game, what they fight for on 3rd and 4th down, the tenacity that they have, how meaningful and focused they are on these particular plays. A lot going to be going on 3rd and 4th down. We're going to need to get some. And the final thing I think you're going to hear people talking about if we win that SEC championship game in regards to those inches is special teams. Cannot go without talking about special teams. And I bet y'all thought I was going to miss that one, because we like to talk about offense and defense, but special teams, if we win that game, Bond will have done his job. He will have made some critical field goals in my view. And I think this is poised to be Constantinu's best year ever. You know, we got this guy Tyler White behind him, got a big leg on him, and this guy can kick. So I think that motivates Nick, and we'll see how much so. He's got a big leg as well, and we've been waiting for him to really see that sucker get flashed. He's got a lot of accuracy as well. There's been some times when maybe it felt like we were let down a little bit. They're not perfect. Don't kick great every single kick. I think there's going to be a big year for him, and he's going to be flipping some fields for us, and that's going to be big to keep our defense with easier runs against very high-powered offenses. Let's say we go against a Tennessee or a Georgia on the other side, and yeah, these offenses have been monsters as of recently, especially Georgia. But Tennessee's been really coming on. Maybe Florida could sneak into that game on the other side. I don't really see anybody else doing it besides Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida, so it looks like it's going to be one of them. We're going to have some say in that. We're going to go to Tennessee, and I think we get Florida in again. That's that crazy talk, right? Like, we've played Georgia that one time. They're talking about flipping these schedules up and giving us Florida right off the bat again. So I'll have to go back and look and check and make sure. So let's get into the pathway that's going to have to take place, and then what will people say if we're able to make it through the West? Well, first, like I said, everything runs through Alabama, right? We're going to have to probably beat them. Losing against them and then, maybe only having one loss, it's possible, right? But if Alabama's only got one other loss, they're going to have to lose to who else? Texas? It's possible. I don't really want to think about it, but it's possible. Maybe Ole Miss catches them. They've been known to do that. LSU could beat them. We'll see what Brian Kelly wants to do with that team this year. And then you have an Auburn with a brand new Hugh Freeze. So I might be missing one team that could jump up and bite them. They do play Tennessee, and Tennessee is moving on up in the world right now. So that's a possibility. I just don't see a great possibility that it's 2, although their regular season win total is pegged at like 2. So there is some reasonable assurance that people think that they could be a 9-win team this year. And that, if that happens, that would be all the great. But we're still going to have to get past it being LSU or a sneaky Ole Miss team. Mississippi State are just not quite seeing it right now, although I think they may have the talent and the experience to do something like that. Probably not Arkansas. So yeah, losing 2 games would definitely have to be a win against Alabama. Definitely going to have to be a win against LSU to represent the West. That would have to be something along the lines of, I just don't see how that's going to happen. But even with one loss, it could be a 3-way tie. So 2-way tie, and it goes head, right? 3-way tie, and we're looking at something like, highest ranking at the time is going to be the representative. There's a bunch of other things in play. This is the last year where there's going to be divisions. Next year, there's not going to be any of that. We're going to just have the best 2 teams represented, I believe is what it's been said. So, but we got one more year till that happens. Looks like it's going to be the highest ranked team at the time if it's a 3-way tie. So we're going to have to try and avoid that at all costs. But between LSU, Tennessee, and Alabama, we got to win at least 2 out of 3. I mean, that goes without saying. We can't let an Ole Miss team sneak up and get us, or an Arkansas team, and we've had our fits with Mississippi State. We're going to have to take care of business against Auburn, show South Carolina that we still mean, business after that horrific debacle from last year, summing up to 5-7. And probably just go ahead and out and dominate a Missouri team. But don't forget, we got to flex on Miami. We really need to have a good game against Miami, and up-and-coming Miami too. So that is kind of the pathway. But let's think about what that season looks like a little bit more in depth, right? Now, when you are thinking about what they'll be saying about a team that makes it all the way through the West, makes it through the SEC West, beats perhaps Alabama, Tennessee, doesn't drop one to Ole Miss or Mississippi State like usual, and a reasonably talented Arkansas team that's in the 3rd year of its coach, I believe, and has done some stuff to us. Maybe it's the 4th year for Pittman, and then we beat those 3 teams, or 2 out of the 3. What will people say? I think the very first thing that comes to mind is they start saying that this offense is winning games. Not that the offense is losing games or that the defense is winning the games, right? So a couple games to consider here. Colorado 2 years ago, we win 10-7, right? All right. Well, a few weeks later, if I'm not mistaken, we beat Auburn. This was the scoop and score game, 20-3. We beat Miami 17-14 this last year, but we lose, I think, to App State. Same thing with the same score. No, we beat Miami 17-9. We lose actually right there after 20-10 to Arkansas, and then we've lost also to App State 17-14. It's these games that are under 20 points that are kind of the problem. So when they're under 20 points, I mean, it can go either way. And this speaks to 2 points. One, I think they're going to say that this team is just an offensive team rebirth. They're scoring 35 points per game. The offense is now winning games. It's not the defense trying to win those games. Remember the scoop and score against Auburn again. Sure, we're still winning that game without it, but the defense is really running the show there. And I want them to keep running the show, but I want this to be able to be said, and it will be said if we can make it through the West, that the offense is powerful. So, yeah, 35 points plus if we're making it through the West, I think is what we're going to see. What else? What else might we see? Look back to that LSU game, and I think you're going to see a lot of not just the talk about us not being able to turn over the ball, but they're going to say this team knows how to win close games. Because that's going to feed into the championship mindset. This team knows how to win those close games. We did it against Colorado. We did it against Miami. We've gotten a few others, just to give some quick examples, but I think that will be true at least a couple times during this season. I'm hoping we dominate a team like Missouri, even possibly Miami, show what we're about again to Arkansas and South Carolina. But you're looking at some close games somewhere along the way, either in LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, maybe in Auburn. They've got the stuff, but maybe we're thinking, well, that should be a game that we win fairly handily and we're highly favored. But depending on what game it comes off of, maybe it's just not our most focused game, and we make some mistakes. We are going to make some mistakes, and so we are going to have to win some close games. And it might only be 7 points, but it's still going to be something. Maybe have that close game against Tennessee, kick a field goal to win it again against Alabama or Florida. It could be any of those, but that definitely will be said. We know how to win close games. Very confident in that. So that's what I think the narratives will be throughout the season and the game itself. I think they feed kind of back and forth close ones to each other, because each one's going to have to kind of feed in to the other. Can we do it? You're damn right. They certainly can do it. They can win the SEC championship game. It will be a task, but it can be done. It's certainly there for, I won't say for the taking, but for us to make our statement this year, have a kind of a Phoenix rebirth. Okay, so that's how we win the SEC championship. That's how we represent the West. For more great stuff like this, more tomorrow, next day, something. Going to have a few of these each week. Go ahead and subscribe so it can come right to you. Remember, each free subscription gets free refills at Kyle Field all season long. So until then, thanks and gig 'em.